He was the last president to have served in the Civil War. He settled in Canton, Ohio, where he developed a successful law practice. He was elected to Congress, where he authored the McKinley Tariff. He served as governor of Ohio and received the Republican presidential nomination. Supporting tariffs and the gold standard, he defeated William Jennings Bryan, an advocate of free silver. As president, he led the country to a quick and decisive victory in the Spanish-American War, gaining Spanish territories. The U.S. also annexed Hawaii. He was elected to a second term in another contest against Bryan. His second term was cut short, however, by an assassin's bullet at the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo. He died there, but was buried in his hometown of Canton, where a monument was erected. He is our nation's 25th chief executive, William McKinley. Look on a map at some sites relating to William McKinley. McKinley was born in Niles, Ohio, in northeastern Ohio, right about here between Warren and Youngstown. And if you go there today, you can see a reconstruction of the house in which he was born. There's also a library and museum there. McKinley served in the Army during the Civil War, and when he came back from the war, he moved to Canton, Ohio, which is a very important place in his life and career. He would live in Canton for the rest of his life. He was a successful attorney there, continued to live there as a congressman and as governor of Ohio. And in his presidential campaign in 1896, he had a front porch campaign where he would give speeches on the porch of his house in Canton, and people would come from miles around to hear him. The site of that house in Canton, sadly, is the house is no longer there. It's now the site of the Stark County Library. There is another house in Canton that you can visit, though. It's the Saxton House, which is the house that belonged to his wife's family. That house today is the First Lady's Library. You can visit that site. Some of the rooms are restored to their appearance during that era. Also in Canton is the William McKinley Presidential Library and Museum, and the McKinley Monument, where McKinley is buried. McKinley, of course, was assassinated in 1901 in Buffalo, which was the site of the Pan American Exposition. If you go to Buffalo today, you can see a marker on the spot where the Temple of Music building was. That's where McKinley was shot. And you can also see there's another marker at the site of the house where he died. And across the street, there's a museum at the site where Theodore Roosevelt was sworn in as president. Now let's take a look at some photographs of some of these sites. Now let's take a look at some books in my library relating to William McKinley. I have several biographies of McKinley. For a short biography, this book is pretty good. It's called William McKinley by Kevin Phillips, and it was published in 2003. This is a very short booklet called A Condensed Biography of William McKinley by Edward Thornton Heald. I got it years ago at the McKinley Museum. It has a brief biographical sketch of McKinley, and it has some good photographs. Here's a photograph from the Front Porch Campaign in 1896. This book is by Murat Halstead. It's called The Illustrious Life of William McKinley, Our Martyred President, and it was published in 1901, shortly after McKinley's death. It contains some of McKinley's speeches as well. Well, this is a recent biography of McKinley. It was published in 2017. It's by Robert W. Mary, who has written some other good history books. It's called President McKinley, Architect of the American Century. And it spends a lot of time on the Spanish-American War and foreign policy and expansion and what the United States' role should be in the world, which was certainly a debate that was being had in the late 19th and at the turn of the 20th century. Well, this is a great book to really delve into the politics of the 1896 campaign. It's called The Triumph of William McKinley, Why the Election of 1896 Still Matters. And it's by Karl Rove, who, of course, was the architect of George W. Bush's campaign in 2000. And he really delves into the specifics of how William McKinley put together a winning coalition in that important election that really started an era of Republican dominance in elections, really until the time of FDR. Prior to 1896, there had been a number of really close elections. So it's a good book. And lastly, this book is called The President and the Assassin, McKinley, Terror, and Empire at the Dawn of the American Century. And it follows the lives of William McKinley and the man who shot him, Leon Czolgosz, who was a Polish immigrant and an anarchist. He was a follower of Emma Goldman, and it traces the anarchist movement as well as the life of McKinley and everything that was going on in that time period. It's a fascinating study. I do have a biography also of McKinley's 2 times opponent for the presidency, William Jennings Bryan, but I'll reserve that for a later episode. Our next program will focus on our nation's 26th president, Theodore Roosevelt.